Hi, my name is Ashleigh Shoecraft. I use she, her pronouns, and we're currently at the Dosewallips State Park. We're going to be going foraging, looking for oysters and some different species of clams. I grew up foraging. My family would frequently go on trips where we would go crabbing or go clamming, and that's something that just became a part of the fabric of who I am. Even in college, I went to school in Southern California where foraging looks very different. There are a lot of citrus trees, avocado trees, like a lot of produce that you can forage, and even on the college campus. I think there's something that's really empowering about foraging. I'm the founder of Braided Seeds. Braided Seeds is a new nonprofit whose mission is to provide access to the outdoors, provide opportunities for rest, restoration, and reconnection to the land by removing barriers to people of color specifically being able to access the outdoors. Shellfishing in Washington State is heavily regulated. Another thing that you want to know before you go is what to wear, right? Because it would suck to get out here and to be inadequately prepared. So typically what I wear when I'm going shellfishing is I try to dress in layers with the most thought going towards my footwear. Often when you're going out to look for oysters or clams, you're going to be walking through muddy flats, and so it's really important for you to be wearing ideally like rain boots, some kind of like waterproof footwear. Even waterproof hiking boots can work really well. Wear whatever you feel comfortable in. So I usually choose like workout pants and then a t-shirt. I have a jacket often for if it's cold, but you want to dress in layers so that you can remove those layers if you need. Aside from clothing, you also want to make sure that you have specific gear so that as you're collecting, you're able to process it. So what I typically bring is a bucket, and just any utility bucket will work. I also bring a shovel because specifically if you're looking for little neck clams or some of the larger species of clams, they're going to be 8 inches or deeper to get, so you want to be able to shovel to dig down to get them. Another thing you're going to want to bring is a hand rake. And this just works really well, especially for the manila clams, which are just 2 to 4 inches below the surface. Typically, if you're not able to squat, you're going to be bending down on your knees while you're clamming. And so I like to bring just like a gardening mat just for my knees to keep them a little bit dry. Gloves also really come in handy, especially for handling oysters. A bag to actually hold your shellfish. A measurer, some kind of measuring tool that you can use to make sure that your shellfish is actually meeting the requirements so that you're able to legally take it. In the crab measurer, they actually have a clam measurer. And there's a circle, and if you can put your clam like on the circle without it falling through, it means that the clam is legal and you can take it. Or there's also just a ruler that you can use too. Either way. And then lastly, if you're going to be getting oysters, along much of Washington coast, when you're collecting oysters, they don't want you to take the shells because they actually house other types of wildlife. So they ask you to shuck right on the beach. And in order to shuck right on the beach, you're gonna need a knife or an oyster shucking tool, and then just a simple jar that you can hold your oysters in for when you want to take them home. Another thing that's actually pretty critical about foraging, specifically for shellfish, is to make sure that you check the tide chart. So you want to know what the tide is for the area that you're going to be venturing out to if you want to come clamming. I've come to Dosewallips State Park and did not check the tide chart and could not forage because I didn't plan ahead. So the lower the tide, the better. So a low tide is going to be a tide that's a negative number. Typically, if the tide is not 1.5 feet or lower, you don't want to come out foraging because it's a low chance that you're actually going to be able to find what you're looking for. A lot of my favorite places to go foraging are at Washington State Parks, and so it's important to know before you go that you are going to want to have a Discover Pass that you can just hang in your car, which gives you access to all of the state parks in Washington, or there are often opportunities to just pay a $10 day use fee in order to be able to park. There are so many different types of shellfish that you can find along the Hood Canal. If you're looking for clams, there are lots of different types of species that you can find. You can find horse clams, little neck clams, manila clams, butter clams, cockles. Those are all examples of just the clams that you can find. You can also crab on a lot of public docks within Hood Canal. If you're crabbing, then you can find Dungeness crab, and you can also find red rock crab. You can also go fishing within the Hood Canal. You can go squidding within the Hood Canal. You can find mussels in the Hood Canal, oysters, gooey duck. There's tons of different options of things that you can find in the Hood Canal. So the next thing that you need to do is make sure that you have a license. Anytime you go out, you want to make sure that you have a license that says that you are approved to be shellfishing. You can purchase a license from any outdoor gear type store. Often, if you're going into the Hood Canal, a lot of the gas stations actually will be selling shellfish licenses. You can also purchase it online at the Washington Department of Fishing and Wildlife website. And so I purchased mine yesterday. It was $27, and I was able to get a year-long crabbing and shellfishing license. So I'm good for the year. I think one thing that people should keep in mind anytime that you're going out is that the land doesn't owe you anything. And so a lot of times we can go out with a perspective that's kind of a colonial mentality where it's just we're just taking. I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that there are millions of lives around you, and those lives are just as important as your life. So it's important to honor the life that's around you, to be mindful of where you walk, be mindful of following those rules, right? It would be like pretty horrible for us to come and grab our daily limit and to put all these little clams that we found back in a way where they're actually going to die, instead of caring for them and making sure that we're replenishing and maintaining like the cycle. I think it's really important to make sure that you remember to pack out whatever you pack in. So if you're gonna picnic or whatever, make sure that you take any water bottles that you bring, any plastic, you leave no trace. Make sure that you can carry out everything that you bring in. If you're gonna go shellfishing with a group, it's gonna be important to know the allergens of the people you're with, because you wouldn't wanna go shellfishing with someone who has a shellfish allergy. It's the first way to stay safe. Once you're out and doing it, it's important to make sure that you don't collect any open shellfish. I also try, if I notice that there's a clam that isn't already buried, not to take that one, because I don't know how long it's been sitting in the sun for. It's important when you go home and process them that you give them time to soak, that you clean them really well to make sure that any sand can get taken out of them. And then when you cook them, if you have any clams or oysters that do not open, you don't want to consume them. Because it may be a sign that it was already dead when you got it, and we don't know what the cause of that was. Also, it's going to be important to be mindful of the signs around you. Often, public beaches will either list publicly or have on their website information about the different toxins that could be present. And they'll advise you whether or not it's necessary for you to cook the shellfish before you consume it, or whether it's okay for you to consume it raw. Typically what I'll do when I'm collecting shellfish is I'll bring a bucket and I'll put salt water in that bucket so that the shellfish can go home in its usual habitat. And then once I get it home, I'll process it immediately. It is seafood, right? You don't want to leave it out because it will start to go bad, and you'll be able to tell by the smell when your shellfish is no longer edible. Yeah, Dosewallips is one of my favorite places to forage, mainly because it's a good centralized location. So it's about 2 hours from Seattle, but once you're here, depending on the season that you come, you can forage for lots of different things. Nearby, there's a harbor, a public harbor, where you can cast a crab pot that can be going while you're out looking for your shellfish. Once you're on the beach, you can find oysters and different types of clams, which is really exciting. And if you venture deeper into the state park, you can actually find a ton of mushrooms, especially chanterelles during the fall. So it's like a really nice base camp if you want a foraging weekend just to go out. Also, the Dosewallips River is stunning. Also, apples. There's so many apples during the autumn. Like literally right now I'm sitting beneath, I think probably a sour green apple tree, but all along the lines of the park are really nice apple trees, and there's blackberries. You can get rose hips. There's also along the trail going in, I didn't see it today, but there's sorrel that you can forage for, and so you just have a ton of options. One thing to be aware of if you choose to come to Dosewallips State Park is that tide can be deceiving, right? The tide could look super far out and you can get lost in foraging and just be having a great time. And then lo and behold, it starts coming in. So one of my favorite memories of being here was I was with my little sister Lily, and we were like foraging and just having a good old time. And then the water started creeping in and we were like, we got time, we don't have our limit yet. And then slowly but surely we walked back with the water past our knees because it came back quicker than we could get back. And it's, I want to say, almost a half-a-mile walk to get to the edge of the tide. So you need a plan to get back because that tide will get you. So it was funny. She was mad about her cell phone and she was just like, oh, and I was just like, this is great. It's an adventure. I think being a woman forager subverts the narrative that women can't provide for themselves. I think there's something that's really empowering about going out and fending for yourself, being out in the wild by yourself, collecting and gathering. And outside, to me, I think is where I feel most grounded in myself. I honestly think that outside is where I feel most human and most connected to my innate wildness. It's where I lose all sense of time and space and just get to be. Public lands, to me, I feel like the name kind of connotes like spaces that are accessible and open to everyone, regardless of race, class, gender. Unfortunately, when I think about public lands within Washington, like I know that isn't the case, that they're not accessible, that there are a lot of barriers to access. And so I think I have a vision for a society where everyone can actually access the wonders of Washington State, the wonders of the Pacific Northwest, without money being a barrier, without gear being a barrier. But we know that isn't currently the case. So when I think of public lands, I think of a vision that is not yet realized, and I think of work that has yet to be done. But that, you know, is exciting to get to be a part of doing. So there you go. This is for us to lean on or just kneel on. And essentially in this ecosystem, we're going to be looking for varnish clams, little neck clams, and manila clams. The clams we're looking for reside like no deeper than 8 inches below the surface, so we can just use a hand rake to get to them. After you like start to see them coming up, you just kind of rinse them off and pull them out. So this is a varnish clam. It's identifiable by the dark brown color of its outer shell, and then it tends to have like white splotches. And then you'll often see like varnish shells just spewing about, and they have purple insides. So oysters have like these little nooks underneath them. So what you want to do is you want to get the knife like kind of leveraged in there pretty well, pretty much.